Welcome, Bulldog fans, to SEC Game Week. Yes, after 3 solid victories, the Bulldogs now open the real stretch of their season at Kentucky. Steve, we've had a chance to talk to a lot of players and coaches about the Wildcats, and there are two minds about it. Most of them have been around for last year's walloping, no other way to put it, when State just crushed the Wildcats on this field, but quite a few were around in 2 years ago when the Wildcats pulled off that last-second drive to counter Mississippi State's own last-second drive. So this is not a series that some of the younger guys take for granted that might have been the case in the past.
There's no question about that, David. And that memory, that last trip to Lexington, is something that has stuck with them. And they've mentioned that before. Gary Green, people like that have mentioned the fact that the last time they went up there, they lost a ball game that they feel like they should have won. Now, Kentucky can make the argument they had virtually outplayed Mississippi State most of the ball game, and save for a Mark McLaurin scoop and score that kind of got the Bulldogs back into it. It set up that late drive that Nick Fitzgerald, with 1:09 to go, he finds Fred Ross for a go-ahead touchdown, and you just simply need a stop. Couldn't get one, but it's just a different day and a different defense for sure.
We talked to Nick Fitzgerald last night, and you bring him up, and he was talking about the Kentucky defense. He said, yes, they do a lot of different things, but he said at the core, they're always going to be a 6 or 7 man box, make you try to prove you can throw the ball, and his goal is to do that and then to loosen things up for State's running game to do what they do. Yeah,
they're definitely the old school mentality of we want to run the football and stop the run, which is pretty similar to what Mississippi State wants to do. Mm-hmm. And people talk about Joe Moorhead's scheme being a lot more pass happy. Really, the issue is they're going to take what the defense allows them. If Kentucky is true to form, they're going to make you beat them in some one-on-one matchups outside, and then they'll get honest with the safeties. But they want to walk those guys down and kind of limit the Bulldog rushing game. And quite frankly, that's been the sharper edge of the two-edged sword here for the Bulldogs offensively. You're averaging 311 yards a game on the ground. You've had 4 different players rush for 100 yards, and the quarterback's done it every single ball game. And so State, I know, believes that they can run the football against Kentucky. They ran the football against Kentucky last year. 8 starters back on that Wildcat defense from a year ago. They remember getting beat the way they did at Pierce. They're going to come out ready to go. But by and large, I think this is a Bulldog offense that kind of has an idea of what they want to do and what Kentucky wants to do, more importantly.
And related to that, this is also a Bulldog offense that will take more shots downfield, whereas in the previous years, no criticism implied, but they had a different passing philosophy. I think the way State is throwing the ball downfield for big gainers and making those plays work will force the Wildcats to do some things different defensively than maybe they want to. Now let's turn to the other side of the coin with the Kentucky offense. Coach Bob Shoop, remember, he has coached 5 times against them directly, 3 at Vanderbilt and 2 at Tennessee, so he's pretty familiar with how the Wildcats want to play an offense. And Steve, you've asked a great question last night during his interview about the trickery that Kentucky likes to throw at you, the gadget plays, and Coach Shoop took that and ran with it.
Well, the first thing I'd like to say, David, is that all of my questions are great. Second of all, I thought Coach Shoop had a great answer, and I really enjoy Coach Shoop. I really do. He's very dry, but he's also very forthcoming with his answers. He doesn't just lob you a couple softballs and call it a day. But, yeah, he did mention that that's the wizardry of the gadget play is a part of their offense. It's not something they put in special. It's something they practice all the time. You have to be prepared for it. And he made mention that, hey, were you guys observing practice? Well, no, we weren't, but we did do some research on Kentucky.
We've seen Kentucky a few
absolutely,
years.
No doubt about it. And listen, they have turned some games. Matter of fact, that 2016 game at Kentucky, if you recall, Kentucky really struggled on offense. And then all of a sudden they hit that double pass. They run that trick play, and then the safeties get out of position. Stephen Johnson makes a great pass. Next thing you know, the game turned, the momentum turned, the crowd turned. They got the game energized, and that kind of propelled them to a great offensive second half. Now, granted, Mississippi State's case of sermonitis contributed to that, but it is a part of what they want to do. They want to get these big chunk momentum plays, and they don't mind digging in their bag of tricks to get it.
The difficulty being, of course, if you fail and get in a 2nd and 3rd down and long against these Bulldog defense, that's a big challenge for them to face, and that's certainly what Coach Shoop and the defense want to force. He pointed out something interesting that I hadn't thought about, though. I mean, we commented often, those of us who were at the Lafayette game the other day, that they were going to try all sorts of crazy stuff, and they really did. And Coach Shoop said something that we hadn't thought about, that it gave them a better preparation for what's going to happen because it forces defense to pick up what he called the magic show and adapt to it, that maybe they got a little sneak preview of what they have to face this week.
I think that's true, David. And I think any time you can be reminded that you have to play fundamental, responsible defense, play your position, don't get caught up chasing the ball and chasing the flow, because that's what happens with these gadget plays with Kentucky. They want to get all the defense pursuing left, throw it back right. And listen, they run a lot of Wildcat with Benny Snell. He's thrown the ball before. And a great back, and as good a back as Mississippi State's going to face all year. But I believe the Bulldog task now is to make them one-dimensional and really put the ball in the quarterback's hands and make him beat you throwing the ball down the field. And quite frankly, David, I don't know that he can.
A couple of health dates for the Bulldogs. Of course, Jamal Peters is out for this week, and though they haven't come out and absolutely said so, we certainly expect Chris Rayford to get the start at that cornerback position. He's been a good, solid cornerback in the boundary corner position that Peters primarily plays. Now, Cam Dantzler played some boundary last week when the injury occurred, but he's been more prone to play the field position as well. You could move that over. You've got Tyler Williams, who's still working his way in the mix. Murray Smitherman has a lot of experience. So there are bodies to put out there against Kentucky who will throw, like you said, for the home run occasionally. Also, we understand Kylan Hill is probably fully healthy, a little more embarrassed than he was hurt about his landing on the sideline there, but he landed on a piece of chain equipment is what ended up hurting, which is a reminder that it's a pretty crowded place down there in the sidelines, as you've found out since you became a photographer as well. But otherwise, the Bulldogs look to be in good condition for their first SEC game. It's
true. And, this time of year, everybody's banged up, and it's only going to get worse. Nobody ever gets healthier during the season. It's one of those things where it begins to wear on you. But, State has been able to kind of share the load a bit because of the fact they've been able to get up in these ball games and play a lot of people, especially in, the two home games. So as a result, the Bulldogs should be fresher. And as we've seen late in ball games with Kobe Jones and Chauncey Rivers and those guys, second and third team guys making plays, it keeps guys like Montez Sweat and Gary Green fresh for the stretch run in the SEC. And so I think Mississippi State's in as good a position as it could possibly be to go on the road for the SEC opener. It's an opponent they're very familiar with, opponent that they've had some great success with the last decade. And so this shapes up to be a great opportunity for Mississippi State to advance to 4-0.
And, of course, the Bulldogs are 14th going into this game and a chance to climb further in the polls and get yourself in that all-important positions as you get into the second half of the season. But the first half is really going to be a bear as you get down through this stretch of Florida and Auburn coming up. As we told you the other day, Florida game 5 o'clock. And we're expecting the Auburn game to be an afternoon game at this point, but we also are told that CBS may well use their X6-day window privilege at this point because they're trying to pick out. They still want to see who wins this weekend and even next weekend as well. So we'll update as it goes. Now, the good news for you who enjoy these videos or for those that just like to laugh at these videos. Steve, we're both going to be in Lexington this year. So we will talk from Kroger Field. Let me get that right now. Kroger has now sponsored Kentucky's field, but we'll be there talking in pregame. We understand the weather may not be great, but it should be okay enough for game time for a late September game. But we'll get a chance to do a preview of the Wildcats, talk about the Bulldog mood as they get ready, and just hopefully catch some of you good Bulldog fans out there. So if anybody out there wants to host our pregame video, just give us the location of your tent, and we'll show up with ourselves, our attitudes, and maybe our appetites.
Yeah, David, and excited to go. And it's one of those things, that I think everybody has the bucket list of seeing a ball game at every SEC stadium, and this is a new one for me. I've been through Kentucky before. I've never attended a ball game in Lexington, so I'm excited about that. But more importantly, David, the personal part of it aside, this should be a really good ball game. This should be a really good test for Mississippi State, and we do feel like Mississippi State is the better team. Actually, the odds makers haven't State installed as a 10-point favorite. I've seen some play with the line as low as 9.5, as high as 10.5. But this is a ball game that most people expect Mississippi State to win after a bit of a tussle. We'll get into that a lot more on Saturday, David, but this is what you play in SEC for, is games like these. And there's so many national people that are expecting this to be one of the more entertaining games of the weekend. And I don't think it'll be for the faint of heart. I think it's going to be a very physical brand of football.
So that's our report. And by the way, if you're living in the Lexington area or somewhere, this is one of the rare games that you can make when you can't make it back to Scott Field to see State play. Bring your copy of Flim Flam, and I'm sure Steve will be willing to sign that and talk about the edition 2 coming out in 2019 as well. Of course, this weekend, Coach Chris Lemonis and the baseball team will be holding more scrimmages as fall ball continues. Gene Swindoll, Mike Neem will be reporting from that. And on the weekend, Paul Jones and Robbie Falk will be at the local high school games, and they'll do their Friday night tracker of Mississippi State commits and the recruits the Bulldogs are interested in. So a lot of content coming this weekend. But tomorrow, Steve and I are on the road. Saturday, we'll be talking to you from Lexington. So for Steve Robertson and our crew at Gene's Page 24/7, this is David Murray.